The fragile and tense ceasefire between Israel and Hamas remains in effect, but the truce has not yet entered its second phase. Underlying disagreements and hostilities continue to fester, even as negotiators and international actors watch closely. At the heart of the impasse lies the question of hostages and their remains. Hamas still holds 21 bodies of Israeli hostages, after having transferred 8 bodies in the past 2 days. One of those transfers, Israel contends, was not part of the hostages in the first place and was the body of a Palestinian. Israel insists it will not begin talks on the second phase of the ceasefire, encompassing disarmament of Hamas and formation of a new government in Gaza, until the bodies of all hostages are handed over to Israel. Israel has further warned that the Rafah crossing, which was open today to facilitate humanitarian aid, may be closed tomorrow if the remaining bodies and hostages are not fully transferred. Yet the situation is not static. Recent media reports indicate Hamas claims to have returned all reachable bodies of Israeli hostages, though Israel disputes that some of the transferred remains were actual hostages. This fundamental disagreement about identity, numbers, and completeness underscores how tenuous the entire truce really is. Despite the ceasefire, lethal operations continue. Israel says it shot and killed 2 Hamas members who allegedly entered territory under Israeli control, a violation, in Israel's view, of the ceasefire agreement. At the same time, internal conflicts within Gaza intensify. Clashes between Hamas operatives and tribes or local opposition groups have turned violent. Reacting to reports of summary executions, the US Central Command issued a statement calling on Hamas to stop this killing as soon as possible and move towards peace. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas also weighed in, accusing Hamas of executing civilians publicly without trial, and insisting there is no excuse for publicly executing these people without trial. These clashes risk not only derailing the truce, but also deepening divisions within Gaza at a moment when unity is essential for any sustainable peace process. The prospective second phase of the ceasefire is highly contentious. Its envisioned terms include disarming Hamas and installing a new government in Gaza beyond Hamas's current rule. Israel views these steps as non-negotiable and contingent on full compliance from Hamas in returning all hostages and bodies. But Hamas has shown no willingness to relinquish control or arms at this stage, and Israel has signaled it will not enter those talks until its preconditions are met. Meanwhile, humanitarian needs are acute. Aid agencies and UN bodies are pressing for fuller access to Gaza, and the United Nations has committed to surging aid deliveries over the next 60 days. However, Israel has threatened to restrict the Rafah crossing, leveraging aid access as a diplomatic tool. International actors are increasingly vocal. CENTCOM's public admonition of Hamas's internal violence underscores US interest in stability and civilian protection. Simultaneously, Israel remains defiant, with Prime Minister Netanyahu framing the ceasefire as a strategic gain and vowing that Hamas will be disarmed. Abbas, meanwhile, has sought to position himself as a moral and political authority. His criticism of Hamas's internal execution practices seeks to draw public distance from the armed group and to strengthen his own role as a representative of the Palestinian people in the West Bank. Within Palestinian politics, the appointment of Hussein al-Sheikh as vice president signals that Abbas is laying groundwork for succession and institutional transition. That move reflects both the advanced age of Abbas, born in 1935, and persistent calls for renewal of leadership within Palestinian circles. All sides are aware of the delicate balance any misstep could reignite full-scale war. Israel's condition that the second phase of talks must await full transfer of hostages and remains effectively gives it a veto over when or whether negotiations will proceed. Hamas is under intense pressure to deliver, but it is unclear whether it has both the capacity and the willingness to meet all of Israel's demands. The internal violence within Gaza and now the public condemnation from Abbas complicate its position. For the people of Gaza, the urgency is immediate. Access to sufficient humanitarian aid depends on the functioning of crossings and the willingness of Israel to permit entry. Yet Israel has already threatened to restrict the Rafah crossing again if conditions are not met. The hostages issue looms not just as a symbolic demand, but as the linchpin for any further progress. If Hamas cannot or will not comply fully, the ceasefire may remain suspended in a limbo of rhetoric and brinkmanship rather than evolving into a deeper peace. Still, all sides remain poised. The coming hours may well determine whether this ceasefire holds, evolves, or collapses entirely.